I would now like to invite Amparo from the RSB to begin her presentation. Amparo, do I have you? Yes. Great. So, just a quick introduction about her. She joined RSB as a Standards and Certifications Director in 2024. She's responsible for the development and strengthening of the RSB Sustainability Certification Framework, which is applicable to the biofuels industry. She spent over a decade in working in sustainability certification and standard setting and has worked for 8 years at the Forest Stewardship Council. And the last 3 years, she's moved into the bioenergy and biomass sustainability certification sector, gaining hands-on experience in the implementation of EU Renewable Energy Directive, as well as policy processes at the EU level in the areas of bioenergy and biofuels. Amparo, the floor is yours. My apologies for the delay.
No
Uh,
problem.
yes, feel free.
Thank you for the introduction. Now going ahead, sharing my screen. Hopefully everything works smoothly.
Yes, it's just coming up.
Does that work?
It's coming up about, yes, I can see it now. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, first of all, of course, thank you for the invitation today and for giving us this fantastic platform to promote our organization and the work that we do. I think is very interesting for the participants today so that they get to know a bit more about the certification process when it comes to sustainability. So my name is Amparo Arellano. As it was mentioned, I'm the Standards and Certifications Director in RSB. RSB is the Roundtable on Sustainable Biomaterials. And I'll be presenting to you how sustainability certification can be utilized as a tool by the industry players in the sustainable aviation fuel as a way of building their reputation and their credibility. So topics that I'd like to cover in today's presentation. First, a brief intro about what is the RSB, who we are, then what is the RSB certification system and how we organize ourselves in our processes. Then a quick recap on what are those services that we provide to economic operators that are trusting the RSB as a certification system. And then I will mention some of the SAF emerging markets that we see, although I think a lot of the ideas have already been mentioned before by the other presenters, so I'll try to keep that section brief, but just recapping on where we see that there's potential for growth in this industry, and then just some final key takeaways on what certification can mean for the industry as well. So first things first, who we are the RSB, the Roundtable on Sustainable Biomaterials. We are an international certification scheme that is promoting the transition to a bio-based economy. And we do this by certifying the sustainability of the biofuels industry and the wider bioeconomy. So while we are very strongly present in the sustainable biofuels industry, our mission as an organization is actually going beyond that, and we're looking into the bioeconomy as a whole. Important about us as an organization, as a certification scheme, is that we have the recognition from multiple third-party organizations, governmental and non-governmental. So we have the recognition by the European Commission for certifying compliance with the Renewable Energy Directive at the EU level, RED 3. We also have the recognition from ICAO for certifying the SAF supply chains at an international level for CORSIA compliance. So we have that recognition as well that applies to the SAF industry. And we also have the recognition from Japanese government for the certification of the bioenergy standard, which is the Japan FIT. So a variety of third-party organization recognitions that we have from RSB. And besides that, we also are a voluntary standard setting organization. So we have our own voluntary standard, which is the RSB Global, which is where we are investing and setting the highest benchmark in terms of social and environmental requirements. So we have our own voluntary standard as well, besides the regulatory compliance. Because of the wide variety of recognition processes that we have from third-party organizations, we are present in a variety of sectors, in the sustainable aviation fuels and the maritime sector, as well as in the biomass sector, as in solid biomass for heat and electricity. And we're also now starting to gain space in the chemical industry, where we see that there's a lot of interest for biomaterials, such as bioplastics and beyond. So those are the sectors where we have a strong presence. We're mainly, fundamentally right now, is the SAF industry, where we have the largest presence. And in terms of geographic presence, we have certificates that have been issued in the US, in the EU, in Canada, in South America, particularly in Brazil, which is an emerging market for us for the SAF industry, as well as Southeast Asia, where we are continuing to grow and develop. So that is a little bit about RSV and the work that we do. It's important to know about RSV that we're not just a third-party certification scheme. So we don't just do certification from a third-party perspective, but we also offer the possibility of a membership. So organizations that are interested in the SAF industry or the bioeconomy as a whole, even if they're not subject to certification, they can also join our membership. And we provide this governance system where stakeholders representing all kinds of backgrounds from social, environmental, economic perspectives, they all come together, also including the research organizations. They come together and they discuss about different topics that they are interested in through our different membership platforms. This is important because we have the endorsement by international organizations in the environmental sector, such as WWF, Canopy, as well as other research institutions that are bringing those elements from the social and environmental perspective as well, and that are defining our identity and our structures and priorities as an organization in the RSB. So we are very proud of being a membership-based organization and having that variety of perspectives in our system as well. Oops, sorry. And here you have all the members that are currently RSB members, or most of them. Some of them I think are still missing since this is a slide from last year. But as you can see, a lot of different organizations present in the SAF industry that are relying and trusting the RSB. Now, what is interesting about RSB and what makes us different from other certification schemes in the biofuels industry is largely this slide here that is showing our principles and criteria. So we have 12 principles that are social and environmental principles that are the backbone of the RSB certification. These are like the highest values that we have as an organization, and where we are, everything that we do, our projects, our standards that we set, the work that we do from the certification angle, advisory services, everything is oriented towards driving a positive social and environmental impact that is aligned with these 12 principles. And I think this really links to what our colleague from IRENA was mentioning earlier, that we need to make sure that the SAF industry, while it's continuously growing and meeting those decarbonization targets, that is also not jeopardizing social and environmental aspects. So I think that is exactly the value that we bring from RSB, in making sure that the feedstocks that are being sourced are not driving deforestation, that they're maintaining so quality, that they're not driving water scarcity, or that they're impacting or jeopardizing the local food security, all these different angles from a social and environmental perspective. So these 12 principles are really important to us as an organization, and we make sure that we embed this in everything that we do in all our activities. And here you have a map of our certificate holders right now. So those companies that are trusting RSB certification and where they're located. So you can see that we are spread out across the globe and that we are continuously growing in emerging markets like Southeast Asia and Latin America. Now, a bit more boring piece of the presentation is exactly when companies want to get certified because they see there's a value in having third-party verification of their systems. What is that process of getting certified and what does it look like? So the first thing before going into the actual process of the certification is knowing that as RSB, we are actually certifying a wide variety of things. I mentioned that in the first slide. So we have regulatory compliance certification. We can certify the compliance with EU RED, with EU Renewable Energy Directive, with international SAF requirements such as ICAO CORSIA. We can certify regulatory compliance in Japanese markets for the bioenergy sector as Japan Fit. But then we also have our RSB Global Standard. This is our golden standard as RSB, is where we set the highest social and environmental requirements for companies, and it's entirely voluntary. So we really have the bandwidth to set the bar higher for companies that really want to showcase that they are that they stand out in comparison to their peers, and they really are investing in sustainability and social responsibility. So here's where we're setting the highest standards, and ultimately is where we want to see the push of the growth of RSB from the RSB global side to drive those impacts that we showed in the principles and criteria. So these are the different schemes that we can certify through third-party verification. However, the pillars for sustainability certification are somewhat the same across all certification schemes. There's always a very basic and fundamental need for having management systems. So a company that wants to get certified, if they want to be successful in the process of getting certified, they will for sure need to have management systems that enable them to track the flow of the materials into their company, setting systems internally to identify risk and mitigate those risks, systems to identify or conduct also internal audits and control their internal processes, to train their staff for documental control, all these kinds of things. So everything that is a management system that I'm sure you're aware of. And in principle, we're hoping every company really has this in place, but this is a fundamental requirement from sustainability certification. Then building on that, and very importantly, is a sustainability piece that really comes from the sourcing of the feedstock. So making sure that the feedstock that is being utilized for the production of SAF or any other kind of biomaterial is really in line with these 12 principles and criteria, and that is really driving those social and environmental positive impacts that we are seeking, and ultimately also mitigating any potential risk of being in breach of any of these 12 principles and criteria. So no link to deforestation, no link to jeopardizing food security, and reduction, also the demand for the reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions and so on. So ensuring that the source is sustainable. And then we also need to make sure that across the entire supply chain, from the source of the feedstock to the production of the SAF, we are also reducing, first calculating and also ensuring the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in comparison to fossil fuel supply chain. So that's also a fundamental element of sustainability certification. And then finally, but very importantly, is the overall traceability. So can you really trace the material from the source all the way to the production of SAF and the utilization of that SAF, and ensure that when you're claiming RSB material, that indeed that can be truly traced. And of course, we are talking about ultimately documental traceability, right? But there has to be systems that ensure that traceability, and this is of course verified by the auditors that go on site when they conduct the audit. Here you have the flow of the different steps of how to get certified. So for companies that really say, okay, yes, I want to show that I'm committed from a social and environmental perspective, that I'm operating in the SAF industry, and that I'm really aligned with these commitments that RSB has as an organization, they will have to follow this process here. So defining the scope of their certification, they will have to apply for the certification with us, and there's a process of stakeholder consultation. So we have a layer of transparency where any stakeholder can really raise concerns about the applicant company. So if there was maybe a local NGO that had concerns about this particular applicant, they would have an opportunity of feeding that information, and we would take that into consideration in the certification process, and so forth. And following that public comment period, then is when the company really has to do most of the work, which is the preparation for the audit. And they need to do self-risk assessments for the identification of risk, which I'll mention later. But risk identification, mitigation, setting a plan on how they will mitigate the risk, do the calculation of greenhouse gas emissions, and document all of that so that the auditors can really verify this from a third-party perspective. Then there's the on-site audit, where everything is verified, so that from a documental perspective, but also cross-checked with the realities on site as well. And then provided everything is okay, then the company is issued their certificate where they can showcase that they are RSB certified, and then ultimately in line with our commitments from a social and environmental perspective. So this is the certification process. And then what is interesting about RSB, particularly compared to other certification schemes that are certifying the biofuels industry, is the level of demand that we have from the due diligence angle. So before any company can even access the RSB certification or initiate their auditing process, they need to do 2 layers of due diligence. So we are asking them to do this, as we call it, the self-risk assessment and the screening exercise. And these are 2 layers of due diligence that applicant companies need to do. The reason for this is because we ultimately want to make sure that any company that joins the RSB certification is aligned with our principles, and we ultimately want to mitigate any kind of risk that were not the case. So the first layer of due diligence is identifying the level of risk. So it would be either low, medium, or high. And this is going to define the audit frequency and the level of effort that goes behind the verification process. So the higher the risk, of course, the more effort so that will be dedicated from the auditors when it comes to auditing this particular operator. So that could be, the level of risk could be dependent on the context and the type of feedstock that you're operating on, the size of the company, all these kinds of things. Then there's a second layer of a screening exercise that is conducted through this risk screening tool, where a company has to evaluate themselves against the audit requirements and the principles and criteria, and they need to identify if there's any potential risk that they're non-compliant with any of those. If they identify a risk, then they need to identify a risk mitigation action, and that all of that is summarized in the environmental and social management plan, which is a report dedicated to the RSB audit process, and that will be subject to the verification by auditors. So all of these layers of due diligence are elements that we are bringing on a voluntary basis from RSB, but we see that it is necessary to ensure the integrity of the biofuels industry, and ultimately making sure that certification is indeed bringing a value to our clients. Talking about credibility and system integrity, I don't know how many of you have been following all the conversations at the EU level, but there was a bit of a scandal back in March in relation to the European Commission and potentially dropping some of certification schemes unrelated to RSB, of course, but ultimately triggering all these conversations about whether there's really integrity in the biofuels industry and whether certification is truly delivering on its purpose. So that got everybody talking, and from RSB, it also got us thinking and analyzing our systems even further to make sure that we are really delivering on the service that we are telling our clients. So basically ensuring their reputation and their credibility. We are, as a scheme, in a very good place because we've always differentiated ourselves in the market in the sense that we are investing in credibility as well as the social and environmental impact side of things, rather than just purely regulatory compliance. And for that reason, we already had in place all these elements that are shown in the slide here that are directed towards building the credibility of our certification system. So we already are asking for a higher level of verification in our auditing process that is based on this concept of reasonable assurance. So more documents that need to be verified by auditors. We had already appointed on a voluntary basis a third-party organization that is monitoring and evaluating the performance of auditors and certification bodies, which are the organizations that have auditors. So we have this oversight body, as we call it, that is verifying and monitoring the quality of the certification decisions, and that we are very proud to bring on board, as we think is a fundamental element of the credibility of our system. Within the RSB, we have also on a voluntary basis added more layers of public consultation, transparency, and information that is publicly available above and beyond what's indicated in regulatory compliance. So all of that is provided in our website. And we're also proud to be under the ICO umbrella, which, if you don't know, ICO is an organization that also audits certification schemes like us and make sure that that we are in line with the overall transparency and stakeholder engagement and other requirements that are necessary for certification schemes. And we are audited annually as well against ICO code, and we are with a green light on that front. So that's, of course, saying something about us. How does certification overall and RSB particularly support economic operators that are currently facing all the difficulties that are related to the regulatory changes that are out there, the strong rhythm at which the legislation and regulations are changing, and as well as the criticisms that are coming up in the public opinion, particularly in the biofuels industry? From RSB, we have a wide variety of services that we provide our economic operators, and the idea is to take the directives, translate them to more user-friendly procedures and standards that they can implement, to provide them with systems that they can follow as easy and user-friendly as possible so that they can achieve certification as smoothly as possible, provided they're operating at a high performance level in terms of social and environmental requirements, but that the process itself is smooth. Because we are still a fairly medium-sized organization, we can still do this hand-holding with companies. So when they have questions about the certification process or the requirements and so forth, we are really here for companies that trust us. So it's a very personalized service that we are offering companies that choose the RSB. And we offer a package of multiple tools and trainings that are available to potential clients. So not just the process for being certified, but we provide an online training platform, which is very tailored to the needs of the different economic operators. We also have a calculator for greenhouse gas emission calculations with the latest index on in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And we also do research on feedstock availability, and I'll mention that later. And of course, our membership, which is the stakeholder dialogue platforms that we offer to those that join our membership. So these are the different ways in which we support economic operators face the challenges that they see in the markets. And I don't want to go into too much depth in this because I think most of the messages have been already summarized. It's just important to know that as RSB, we are also ourselves doing research, and not just doing research in the form of feedstock assessments, but also providing the results public in our website. And the idea here is to really gather information that will support the industry in taking the appropriate decisions when it comes to their financial investments and which technologies to follow, what kind of feedstock to source, and that kind of thing. So one of the research areas that we have are the feedstock assessments that we have done always in collaboration with re-owned organizations like WWF, Boeing, research institutions like Agroecone and IASA. And ultimately, the idea is one, to map out the feedstock availability of different kinds of feedstocks across the world, and then to analyze those feedstocks and compare them to the 12 principles and criteria in the RSV, and to see what not only is there available feedstock, but what is the level of risk that is associated to this feedstock for each of those 12 principles and criteria. So it gives companies an idea of where they could potentially source, where not only the feedstock availability is high, but where the risks are either medium low, or where they can implement a set of actions that would then mitigate those risks. So of course, we don't want to rule out any region, but the idea is that the risks are mitigated before the sourcing so that companies can get RSB certified. Here you have all the different regions where we have done this research, and the results and the reports are all on our website, and I'm happy to share. So the results are truly have already been mentioned by other presenters. We see Brazil as a really important potential country. Overall, South America has a massive potential when it comes to the jet fuel production, but specifically Brazil. And it was identified that energy cane is the largest contributor as a feedstock for biofuel production because of their high yield, and then other types of methodologies that could be useful as intercropping, always bearing in mind that there's sustainability challenges that will need to be mitigated in order for the feedstock to be RSV certified. So Brazil was identified as a key country, and then Southeast
Miss
Asia
Amparo,
is
I was just,
also,
if you could just wrap in the next 1 minute or so, we're over time
yeah,
now. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. I think I'll just walk through the next ones because there's already been mentions of the key regions for feedstock sourcing, which is Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam by colleagues. So I won't need to repeat that. In terms of the India, I wanted to mention something since a lot of you are representatives from that country. As you know, there's mandates that are going to be supporting the development of SAF, and I don't need to go into that because we've already mentioned that earlier. Um, and there's also challenges, as you guys have mentioned earlier, as well in terms of scaling the industry. But overall, there's a lot of potential that can be pursued from RSB. We are very excited about the India context. We are currently implementing a project together with Boeing that we launched a couple months ago, and where our focus is the sugar mills and the sugarcane supply chains, where we want to get a bit ahead of the curve and start doing awareness raising and capacity building for Indian farmers that are involved in the sugar mill and sugarcane supply chain. So the idea is to raise awareness about SAF, about bioeconomy, and specifically RSB, so kind of prepare the market before or in parallel all these technologies are put in place, so that when things are, from a technological perspective, ready to go, we also have build the capacity and the training. So we are already implementing this and pretty excited about that. And just to close, why should companies get certified? It meets the consumer demands. It demonstrates the reputation of companies because it comes from a third party verification perspective and is overall driving innovation in the biofuels industry, we believe. So that's it from my side. And thank you, everybody, for your time. And there you have my email if you're interested.